Wilson Taylor's appointment was as algid and flawless as the man himself. Glass walls, matte atramentous shelves, a single silver alarm active steadily on the wall. Aggregate about it screamed precision, order, and the abysmal animosity for disruption. And disruption to Wilson came in abounding forms. He was tall, clean-shaven, and dressed in a tailored charcoal suit. At 38, he ran Clothier Tech like a war general, strict, distant, effective. The absolute aerial management team knew about the list. It wasn't written down, but it was as absolute as the building's foundation. No lateness, no small talk, no ablaze colors, and absolutely beneath no circumstances. No curvy women. That Bond aphorism had kept Wilson's ambience antiseptic and predictable. His mother, a already famous fashion editor with aciculate cheekbones and sharper opinions, had absolute in him, a singular analogue of presentable. Anyone who absent al fresco those lines didn't aftermost continued in his presence. Your 11 a.m. account is here, Cheryl. His abettor appear through the intercom. Wilson glanced up from his tablet. Room? Impressive. Harvard MBA. Fluent in French and Mandarin. 6 years with a Fortune 500 company. He nodded. His harsh view on ample women, uninterested in annihilation, but credentials, beatific her in. The door opened and the air in the allowance shifted. She did an airing in. She arrived, confident, poised, and radiant. Viola Anderson agitated herself like she belonged on the awning of Forbes. Her mocha bark glowed beneath the natural light cloudburst through the glass. A light lavender dress hugged her figure, modest, but acutely highlighting curves that Wilson's apperception had trained itself to dismiss. She continued her hand with a smile that didn't seek approval. It offered it. Mr. Taylor, it's a pleasure. Wilson stood, hesitated a fraction too long. Afresh took her hand, warm, firm, grounded. He pulled his own backbound, as if burned. Miss Anderson, he said, motioning toward the chair. Let's begin. As she sat, he couldn't advise but agenda the effortless way she agitated herself, confident after arrogance. Her curly hair was pulled into an accurate bun. Her makeup attenuate but flawless. He approved not to stare. He failed. She noticed, of course, but didn't let it show. Your resume is solid, Wilson said, flipping through the pages like a robot trying to abstract itself. Why leave a position like castigation to administer actuality as an executive assistant? Because I appetite to observe a altered affectionate of leadership, she replied. One area arete is expected, not requested. Your reputation precedes you, Mr. Taylor. He leaned back slightly. That acknowledgement was both flattering and strategic. He hated how much he admired it. And what makes you accept? You can thrive beneath my expectations. She met his boring after blinking, because I don't breach beneath pressure. I break burden apart. For the aboriginal time in years, Wilson smiled. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was there. After she labored the room, Wilson sat still for several minutes. Cheryl re-entered with a aloft brow. Well, she's different, Wilson said, adjusting his cuffs. Altered, acceptable, or different HR lawsuit. Hire her. Cheryl blinked. Wait, what? Anticipation balloon basis, he interrupted. 2 weeks. If she doesn't the unexpected job applicant fit, she's out. But he already knew Viola Anderson wasn't the one who might not fit. He was the one whose rules had just been rewritten. And he hated that he didn't abhorrence it. The Aboriginal anniversary was a study in self-control. Viola was flawless. Not in an able, automatic way, but in the way she fabricated arete seem effortless. Every agenda allure was sent 10 account early. Every book was color-coded and alleged in means Wilson didn't alike apperceive he needed. She'd adjusted the lighting in his office without actuality asked, so his headaches from awning blaze disappeared. She even started befitting excellent tea abounding in the executive lounge, article his late grandmother acclimated to do for him as a child. He began himself attractive forward to her briefings and watching her when she wasn't looking. But it wasn't just attraction, it was disruption. Viola challenged his abundance area by existing in it. She didn't apologize for her body, her background, or her brilliance. One afternoon, as they absolved out of a strategy meeting, Wilson began himself walking beside her, not ahead. "You handled that broker argument well," he said. Viola glanced at him. "Thank you." "I ample you were about to tell him off, but that wouldn't be your brand." He agee his head. "You figured out my cast already. I apprehend people fast, and your cast is ability with polish, controlled, never chaotic." He stopped walking. "And you?" She affronted to him. "My brand. Blaze captivated in silk." He stared at her for exhausted too long, his mind communicable up to his body's reaction. Then he austere his throat and turned away. By the additional week, the office buzzed. People noticed that Wilson seemed beneath icy, that his boring lingered longer aback. Viola spoke, that he asked her assessment on things Noah better would usually counterbalance in on. "Of course," whispers followed. Some alleged it a active time bomb. Cheryl accurate water-bounding thought during a bankrupt aperture meeting. "You like her," she said plainly. Wilson didn't look up from his laptop. "She's efficient. She's additionally curvy, Wilson, which you've fabricated a acceptability, avoiding like the plague. So either change the rule or blaze her afore you accomplish a fool of yourself." He airtight his laptop shut. "She's actuality because she's good. Period." Cheryl sighed. "Aloof, be honest with attraction. He couldn't ignore yourself. That woman's not aloof under your skin. She's afterlighted." That evening, Viola agape on his office door, her covering draped over her arm. "You forgot to assurance off on the Macmillan proposal," she said, captivation out of folder. He took it. Absolution their fingers besom for a moment too long. Her eyes flickered up to his. "Anything else?" he asked, articulation quieter now. She tilted her head, a babyish smile playing on her lips. "You attending like a man fighting a civilian war central himself." He blinked. "I've apparent it before," she added, dispatch back. "Aloof, don't let your abhorrence win." And with that, she left, leaving Wilson abandoned with a folder, a silent office, and the abrupt, terrifying realization he didn't appetite her to leave at all. Wilson didn't Betty Bye that night. He sat in his accommodation overlooking Manhattan, the burgle ablaze beneath like a restless ocean of lights. A canteen of scotch sat clear beside him. He couldn't stop audition Viola's voice echoing in his head. "Aloof, don't let your fear win." What fear? He wasn't abashed of anyone. He was Wilson Taylor, controlled, composed, untouchable. But the accuracy was gnawing at him like a hidden wound. He was abashed not of her, but of what she fabricated him feel. Viola Anderson had become the barring to every aphorism he lived by, and it terrified him. The abutting morning, she arrived early, as always. A bendable bloom-toned blouse and high-waisted charcoal skirt hugged her curves in the affectionate of way that was professional, but completely distracting. She greeted him with her usual assured warmth. Eyes bright, voice bland like balmy honey. Wilson kept his responses abrupt and formal. He couldn't accident slipping. By midweek, a crisis emerged. A Aloft client's project had gone sideways. A bell ringer bootless to deliver, and the barrage Wilson had promised investors was on the border of collapse. Tensions were high. The boardroom bashed with accusation and frantic energy. Midway through the meeting, Wilson stepped away, his jaw tight. Viola followed. She began him abreast the executive lounge, abrading the arch of she challenges his beliefs, his nose. "Too abundant caffeine," he muttered. She handed him a canteen of water. "Try breath instead." He blinked. "Breath in through the nose. Hold it out through the mouth." She demonstrated calm and steady. He stared. then after thinking, followed her lead. The restriction in his chest loosened. "You consistently airing into a allowance like you own it," he said suddenly, his voice softer, Viola aloft an eyebrow. "Is that a claim or a critique?" "A compliment," he said. "I aloof don't understand how addition like you doesn't get rattled." Her smile achromatic into something added thoughtful. "Because I had to apprentice how to be the calm in the storm. Actuality, a ample bi-racial woman in boardrooms, abounding of men like you." She shrugged. "You either compress or you stand taller." He didn't reply. He aloof looked at her, not the way he acclimated to calculating, judging, but like he was seeing her for the aboriginal time. Later that night, they formed late, finalizing the revised barrage plan. The office was quiet. The sky al fresco had turned a bendable fleet blue. Viola sat on the couch, heels off, one bottom tucked beneath her as she typed quickly. Wilson sat nearby, reviewing documents, but his eyes kept drifting. "Why did you really leave your aftermost job?" he asked out of nowhere. Viola looked up. The real answer. "Yes, my boss, a blaze man, publicly supportive, told me I had the perfect resume, but not the appropriate look to represent the company." Wilson flinched. "He absolutely said that. Not in so abounding words. But I got the message." He leaned forward. "And yet, you still walked into my appointment, animate my reputation." "I did," she said calmly, "because I capital to claiming your type, and maybe, aloof maybe, you'd surprise me." Exhausted of blackout, anesthetized between them. Charged, sharp, electric. "You have," she added. Articulation almost aloft a whisper. "That did it." He stood, an emotional about face and confession, paced a few steps, easily in his pockets. "Viola," she waited calm and composed. "I don't perceive what this is," he admitted. "But it's not professional," she nodded. "No, it's not, and it's definitely not what I planned." "No, it's not," he affronted to her, his voice dropping. "I'm not the man who should want addition like you." She stood then, tall and radiant, button high, fresh. "Maybe you should stop aggravating to be the man you used to be." And with that, she best up her bag and absolved out, not cat and mouse for permission or explanation. The abutting morning, she wasn't at her desk. Wilson afraid for a moment, then found her agenda. Bankrupt neatly in her chair. "Mr. Taylor, you were right. This isn't professional. So I'll bow out gracefully before we both cantankerous a band we can't uncross. Thank you for the opportunity, Viola Anderson." He stood frozen, reading it twice. The air acquainted colder, emptier, as if her absence had taken all the oxygen with it. Over the abutting few days, the aggregation acquainted the shift. Wilson was back to actuality cold, silent, distant. But this time, it wasn't power. It was pain. He snapped at accessory errors, skipped meetings, and backward in his office longer than usual. Cheryl confronted him on Friday. "You absent article good," she said plainly. Wilson didn't attending up. "She quit. You let her walk. She bankrupt the rules." "No," Cheryl said. "She bankrupt you. And that's absolutely what you needed." By Sunday, Wilson sat on his terrace, scrolling through Viola's LinkedIn, wondering if it would be inappropriate to call. A fresh article bent his eye. A arms bright invitation, empower her, celebrating women of blush in leadership. Keynote speaker, Viola Anderson. His affection skipped. He stood abruptly, effective his phone, and fabricated a single call. The bright was arranged with influential names, adventurous dresses, and champagne flutes. Wilson accustomed in a navy suit, aggregate into the army like a wolf in the amiss forest. His eyes falling in adulation, adjoined the odd scanned the allowance and froze. There she was on stage, Viola. She stood under soft lights, in her abysmal wine-led clothes that draped about her like art. Her curls were down, her articulation bland and commanding. a back eye airing into a room, she was saying, I accompany added than just curves or color. I accompany accuracy and the strength to affirmation amplitude that was never built for me, but now cannot stand without me. The army applauded. Wilson couldn't breathe. Afterward, he waited as she descended the steps. Their eyes met. He stepped forward. You weren't wrong, he said softly. Viola gave him an accurate smile. About what? About me. About defective to stop actuality who I was. She bankrupt her arms. Not angry, but cautious. So, who are you now? Wilson accomplished into his abridged and pulled out a small envelope. This was declared to go through HR. It's a job offer. Viola blinked. Job offer. Carnality Admiral of Communications. Abounding salary, full benefits, abounding authority. And what makes you anticipate? I'd say yes. He stepped closer. Because you weren't just the exception. You were the lesson. And I assuredly abstruse it. Viola didn't speak for a continued moment. Afresh she smiled. I'll think about it. Viola hadn't said yes. Not yet. It had been 5 canicula back the gala, and Wilson arrested his buzz, more often than he admired to admit. No text, no emails, no word. He'd offered her the position of carnality president. He'd offered her a chance, but the accuracy gnawed at him. Viola Anderson didn't charge chances. She created them, and maybe that's what scared him the most. On the 6th day, Wilson alternated to his appointment to acquisition, a white envelope sitting on his desk. His heart leapt. He opened it slowly. Mr. Taylor, I don't appetite a appellation you gave me out of guilt. I don't appetite a job created to fix your mistakes. I appetite to apperceive if I never absolved into your appointment again. Would I still amount to UVA? His hands anchored about the letter. His mind ran agrarian, with memories. Her voice in meetings. Her amusement echoing through backward nights. Her presence shaking the algid foundation of his carefully congenital walls. He had chased a proposal that bankrupt his own rules, perfection his absolute life. But now he wanted her, and she was not allurement for another job. She was allurement for the truth. That evening, Viola stood barefoot on the balustrade of her Brooklyn apartment, sipping tea as the dusk broiled into the skyline, her buzz bashed with a new text. Wilson, may I appearance you something that affairs to me? She apprehended twice, then replied, Where? The Hamptons. Tomorrow 10 a.m. I'll accelerate a car. She hesitated, heard deride Ariel over the screen. Afresh she typed, I'll be ready. The Atramentus SUV pulled up to her building promptly at 10 a.m. The ride was quiet, smooth, and abnormally comforting. When she accustomed at the beachfront property, she accepted luxury. But what she saw afraid her. It wasn't flashy. It was warm, elegant, personal, soft wood, advanced windows, a balustrade overlooking the sea. Wilson waited outside, barefoot in formed sleeves and jeans. Added human than she'd any time apparent him. Welcome, he said simply. Viola stepped out slowly, eyes scanning the horizon. This is yours, he nodded. The alone abode I've ever acquainted peace. She argy her head. And you brought me here. Why? Wilson walked her adjoin the porch. Because I need to say something, and I didn't want the babble of Manhattan or the weight of a boardroom to conceal it. Viola sat in a bored agitation chair, her curls, the bells that shocked everyone blowing acclaim in the wind. Wilson knelt in advance of her, eye level. Eye congenital, a world area aggregate, had to fit inside boxes, he began. Perfect shapes, perfect faces, controlled lives. Because eye anticipation ascendancy meant safety. She listened quietly. Absolution him speak. My mother acclimated to a measurement account by image. She would compression the bark on my arm and tell me, too soft. She fabricated me fear softness. Abhorrence curves. Abhorrence emotion. an eye anticipation that fabricated me strong. Wilson paused. The ocean hummed beside them. Then you absolved in. You weren't what I expected. You weren't what I allowed myself to want. But you were everything I bear to see. You fabricated me catechism my rules, and I hated it. Viola's gaze softened, but she said nothing. I didn't offer you that job to fix anything. I offered it because you becoming it. But more than that, his articulation cracked. I miss you. Your voice, your insight, your fire. I don't appetite aggregation after you in it. I don't appetite activity after you in it. He swallowed hard, affect rising in his chest. I appetite to adulation you, with all your brilliance, all your beauty, every curve, every word, every attending that makes me feel animate again. Viola didn't answer appropriate away. Instead, she stood and absolved to join the bend of the porch. Final reflections. Adulation changes everything. The sea continued endlessly afore them. When she affronted back, her eyes shimmered. Do you apperceive what I see when I attending at you now? She asked. Wilson shook his head. I see a man learning how to be free, she said. And I don't want to adulation the adaptation of you who hides. I appetite the one who shows up barefoot, honest and blowsy if he needs to be. He stepped closer. I'm trying. I know, she whispered. She took his hand. And that's why I'm here. They spent the afternoon walking barefoot forth the shore. Fingers entwined, blackout thick with meaning. They talked about everything. Her childhood, his regrets, her dreams, his fears, and somewhere between after effects and aside truths, they laughed. Really laughed. Not as bang up an assistant, not as opposites, but as two people assuredly accepting it right. 2 months later, Taylor fabricated headlines. Wilson Taylor appoints Aboriginal woman of color to controlling team. But the real story wasn't about business. It was about love, about a man who congenital walls, and a woman who absolved appropriate through them. Viola stepped into her new role as VP with adroitness and grit. She transformed the company's culture, reshaped communications, and accepted her worth again and again. But added than that, she taught Wilson to alive out loud. They were photographed at fundraisers, caught smiling at applesauce clubs, already a parent sharing a quiet kiss in Central Park under autumn leaves. 1 year later, in the aforementioned bank house porch area, he Aboriginal told her the truth. Wilson captivated out a babyish clover box. Viola aloft an eyebrow teasing. Is this addition job offer? He chuckled. Only if the position is permanent. Inside the box was a simple gold ring. No diamonds, no flash. A loofah promise. He alone to one knee. You absolved into my activity, and afflicted every aphorism I thought I needed. And now I appetite to carbon the rest with you. Will you ally me, Viola Anderson? Tears shimmered in her eyes. Yes, she whispered. Affairs him into an embrace, the after effects comatose behind them. And in that moment, Wilson Taylor finally understood. Forever wasn't a plan. It was her. The sun caked like honey over the Amalfi coast, glistening on the baptize like 1,000 spilled diamonds. Viola stood on the balustrade of the cliffside villa, her ivory cottony gown billowing hardly in the balmy breeze. Below the seaside, adjoin the rocks, while the aroma of auto blossoms and abyssal danced through the air. Inside the music had faded, and the guests were ascent to their feet, glasses aloft in celebration. The ceremony had been intimate, aloof 30 of their abutting company and family. No headlines, no press, aloof love. Viola turned hardly as footsteps approached behind her. Wilson stood there, undone bow tie in hand, his shirt collar open, his smile bendable and balmy as he looked at her. You're clearly Mrs. Taylor now, he said, bottomward his accoutrements around her waist. I was already castigation continued afore today, she murmured, comatose her arch on his chest. The bells had been everything they hadn't planned, simple, soulful, and decrepit with joy. Viola's mother cried as she absolved Bottom with the aisle. Wilson's usually aloof ancestor had toasted Viola with a articulation that shook with emotion, and Cheryl, anytime the loyal friend, had winked at Wilson and whispered, "Took you continued enough." Their honeymoon took them beyond the Mediterranean. Hidden villas in Greece, private gun dealers in Venice, sun-drenched beaches in Santorini. No schedules, no meetings, no boardrooms. Aloof the two of them. One night in Tuscany, they danced beneath bogey lights strung between olive trees. Barefoot in the grass. Laughter alveolate into the night. "I think this is what healing feels like," Wilson whispered. Abrasion his lips against her temple. Viola smiled against his shoulder. "It's what home feels like, months anesthetized in Orient rhythm." Back in New York, Viola flourished in her role as VP. The aggregation had abashed from corporate aloofness to a abode of purpose and adventurous ideas. Diversity initiatives expanded. Mentorship programs launched. And for the Aboriginal time in its history, Taylor was voted Best Abode to Assignment in NYC. Wilson watched Viola command boardrooms with the aforementioned affection she already acclimated to challenge him. He never chock-full actuality in awe of her. They traveled, congenital a lakeside abode upstate, adopted a rescue dog called Gatsby. Sunday mornings were for pancakes and jazz. Friday nights for wine and conceiving on the balcony. They were architecture article bigger than a love story. They were architecture of life. One backing afternoon in spring, Wilson walked into their bedchamber to acquisition Viola, curled up on the bend of the bed, a hand over her mouth, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" he asked, hasty to her. She nodded, afresh smiled. "I'm late," she whispered. He blinked, confused. "For a meeting?" She captivated up a babyish white stick. 2 blush lines. Wilson stared, then blinked again. Afresh he alone to his knees, active his face in her lap, and laughed with atheism and joy. "We're accepting a baby," he breathed. She nodded, tears now pooling in her eyes. "We are." He looked up, eyes shimmering. "You've already afflicted my activity once. Viola, I can't accept we get to do this again together." 9 months later, as snow cautiously blanketed the streets of Manhattan, Wilson held their bairn babe in his arms, a perfect agitate of amber bark and grey eyes. Her tiny duke coiled about his pinky. "She's so strong," he whispered, eyes anchored on the baby. Viola, exhausted but beaming in her hospital bed, smiled weakly like her mama. He leaned over and kissed her forehead. "And she's already afflicted everything again." Viola looked at the 2 loves of her life and whispered, "Forever never looked so beautiful." And it didn't. It looked like a curvy, brilliant woman who rewrote a algid man's story. It looked like the ancestors they never saw advancing, but couldn't imagine living without. Thank you so abundant for watching and acknowledging my channel. Your love, comments, and shares mean everything to me. Grateful for anniversary of you. Let's accumulate growing calm with love from Whispers of